Do without wilt should be the whole of the law. Greetings, I'm Lexi Eve, and welcome back to another Magic and Theory and Practice video. Today we're going over Our Lady Bablon and the beast whereon she rideth, also concerning the transformations, which is chapter 11 of Magic and Theory and Practice. So if you notice the title, I actually got a certain type of text online where you could have a line drawn through whatever word or sentence you're writing, and I actually put a line through Bablon because this chapter basically begins, quote, "The contents of this section, inasmuch as they concern Our Lady, are too important and too sacred to be printed. They are only communicated by the Master WHEREON to chosen pupils in private instruction," end quote. So I'm gonna stick to my script mostly, but I just wanted to comment. So chapter 11 is obviously in reference to the number of Magick, the number of Nuit as per the Book of the Law, and the number of Hadith as per the Book of the Law. So I think because it's chapter 11 and Magic and Theory and Practice is written in a very similar style to Eliphas Levi's Dogma and Ritual, which follows the tarot cards. For example, in Dogma and Ritual, chapter 13 is concerning necromancy and magic of death and stuff like that, which is the death card, Atu 13. So I think Magic and Theory and Practice has a similar thing going on. Chapter 11 refers to the Thoth Tarot deck, Atu 11, which is Lust, where you see Bablon and the Beast riding. So to get back to my script, the Beast and Bablon are only communicated by Master WHEREON. However, in my last upload, Sex Magic Part 2, I gave a fairly lengthy account of Bablon and the Beast, and quote long sections from the Vision and the Voice, so maybe check that out if you haven't. In this video, I'm only going to go over what's in the chapter itself, and that excludes Bablon, as I said. Now, in the future, I do plan on making a playlist of videos, probably one video per the Lemic deity, and that'll be, Nuit, Hadith, Bablon, the Beast, Aiwas, Heru Raha, and the multiple names that come with Heru Raha, including Rahor-Ku, Rahor-Kuit, Harpocrates, and possibly other deities will come up. There's a bunch of different entities mentioned in the holy books, and, if the playlist is interesting to people and they want more videos of that nature, I have no problem going through the holy books, seeing what deities are referenced in a Thelemic fashion, and making a sort of mythology explained playlist. So I do plan on doing that, at least for the main deities. Just stay tuned for that. So, regarding this chapter, to paraphrase what comes next, Crowley writes that one will not understand Bablon because she is connected with Binah, which is above the abyss, and unless they have properly formed their astral body and attained thereunto, it's going to be impossible to commune with Bablon properly and to really understand her. Training of the astral realm in AA, Astron Argon, begins in Malkuth, the neophyte grade. Eliphas Levi dedicates a great deal of time and space in Dogma and Ritual to explaining the astral light and how one can use it. So check out that book. If you haven't read that at least a couple of times already, I suggest doing so. Mastering the astral light is a great first step towards attaining the divine light, as the astral is a lower reflection of the higher light. Through it, many things such as astral traveling, circle casting, and invocation are performed. Even the LBRP, you need some type of astral sight if you're going to actually visualize and be able to see the pentagrams suspended in animation. Otherwise, you're just moving your hand in space and you're not really doing anything. You have to be able to coagulate and form the astral light into coherent shapes that will actually stay floating suspended in the air, and then you have to charge them with the divine name. So it's not just empty gestures and words. You have to be able to control that light and make it do what you want it to do, and to do that you have to be able to see it. So there's plenty of literature on that. I'll probably go over some in the future. Liber O is the best place to start, and then obviously AA does training in that. There are other orders that do training in that. if you want to go and pursue astral traveling and mastering the astral light. So, moving forward with the chapter, Crowley writes, quote, "The Book of the Dead contains many chapters intended to enable the magical entity of a man who is dead and so deprived of the material vehicle for executing his will, according to the theory of death that was current in ancient Egypt, to take on the form of certain animals, such as a golden hawk or a crocodile, and in such form to go about the earth, quote, taking the pleasure among the living," end quote. We need not, however, consider this question of death. It may often be convenient for the living to go about the world in some such incognito, end quote. So, what we're going to be talking about very briefly is the powers of the warg, the skin changer, the person who can leave their body and go into whether it's an animal or a person or another entity, and operate that entity as if it was their own body. So we're going to explore that a little bit in this chapter, which is pretty cool. Crowley goes on to describe two methods of how using this power is connected with the idea of the soul of the deceased being a god, seeking incarnation, and how it incarnates. So I recommend reading the chapter so you get full context on what I just said. It's about the Book of the Dead and how the soul travels through the duat and goes to the fields of Aru, how it wanders on the earth and the astral plane for a while, and all of that fun stuff. And based on karmic repercussions, how a soul goes about finding a suitable host to incarnate into. The first method that he describes that's about this warg concept is via the homunculus method. For a full example of this, read Moonchild by Aleister Crowley. I intend to discuss this form of magic in a future sex magic video. If you don't know briefly, a homunculus is basically creating an entity from an unborn fetus that has certain magical or deity-like properties. So in Moonchild, they have a willing woman get impregnated, and she undergoes a 9-month ritual where she is exposed to nothing but things of the moon and Luna. She drinks a meal of mostly like cream and honey, things that are very related to the moon. Even so much that the course of doing these Luna invocations so many times daily and 9 circumambulations, and the only time she's allowed out of her bedroom space is to go on a balcony to gaze at the moon and connect with it. Things like that. Constant invocations of moon deities. That her skin turns pale and starts glistening like it was the moon itself, all plump and impregnated like the full moon. So Moonchild's also in the homunculus thing is very interesting. Liber 367 is a 9th degree document of OTO that goes fully into that method. You could probably find that online if you're not in the order and you don't have oats that, or you just don't want to ruin your future initiation career, you could read those. But like I said, I do intend to do a part of a video on the homunculus. Now, the second method Crowley describes is to astrally enter the body of an already living being and push them out or exist therein with them. So you could do this whether you're a deceased person on the astral plane and you no longer have your own body, or if you're living and listening to this lecture now and you know how to astral travel, you can use this power. You can go into another entity's body and physically push them aside, either push them out completely or push them aside and take the wheel from them and operate their mind and body regardless of them if you're able to overpower them. So to do this to a human, mind you, without permission, is completely unlawful. You would then be breaking Liber Oz outright, as everybody has their own will to live. But with an animal, one can easily make a pact by taking care of it physically, being fully responsible for its well-being, and slowly showing the animal spiritually what's happening. Maybe you astral project, like cats are a good example because from my experience with cats, they can see the astral light very easily, so they kind of intuitively know what it is. It doesn't freak them out. So if you astral travel and you get to the point where you're out of your body and you have a cat present that you've been caring for a long time and it's familiar with your astral body, then you could slowly approach it and let it get comfortable with like petting it on the astral plane, and then slowly begin to enter but not take control so it doesn't freak out. And then in time work with that animal until it completely trusts you to the point that you train it to let it um, stand aside and allow you to take over its body. But it has to be willing on the animal's part. If the animal's completely resistant and is like fighting you, that's like a clear indication that this animal doesn't want to do that. So you're doing something wrong. Either you're not approaching the animal correctly, or you're about to infringe on this animal's right to exist. So just be mindful of that. So let's say you're using an animal. One can make a pact with it very easily by taking care of it. And now, if you could get to this point where you could do it, you actually help the animal by demonstrating spirituality and magic to it. Perhaps then in its next life, you will have given it a karmic link for it to be raised to a higher form of life when it incarnates, allowing it to do magic and seek union if it becomes a human. There are, however, several things to note. Firstly, by doing this with an animal, you are binding yourself to its karma, and you must account for that. Also, you should not be in the animal all the time, as you need to take care of your own body, obviously. If you do not, at time of doing this, possess your own body, i.e., you're dead on the astral, you must know whether or not it is your will to incarnate into a new body again, or you at least have to know for how long you could remain safely on the astral plane without a body, as in time the astral body itself begins to dissolve if it doesn't have a physical body to regenerate into. If you're just stuck on the astral plane forever, a given amount of time goes by and your astral body deteriorates into nothingness and the ego completely dissolves. Also, this is a quote from the chapter, quote, "The bond which unites the person with that elemental, the animal, the familiar, is love. And though it is only a small part of the outfit of the magician, it is the whole of the outfit of the elemental. He will therefore suffer intensely in the case of any error or misfortune occurring to his protege. This feeling is rather peculiar. It is quite instinctive with the best men. They hear of the destruction of a city of a few thousand inhabitants with entire callousness. But then they hear of a dog having hurt its paw, and they feel like Weltschmerz acutely." End quote. I don't know who Weltschmerz is, but it's, you can hear on the news 100 people die in a plane crash, and it's kind of numb. It's just a statistic. But my best friend's mother that I know, that I've known since I'm a child, died of a pneumonia, and suddenly there's an emotional reaction, let alone if it's a physical blood family member of yours that you're very close to, it's an even bigger emotional reaction. So that's kind of and with animals, a lot of people tend to be more sympathetic. Because many animals are dependent upon humans, we are the dominant form of life on this planet. I mean, yes, there's nature, and nature will rebel if you get to a certain point and you abuse it. But in terms of the animal kingdom, we're basically top of the food chain at this point. Yes, one-on-one fight with a lion's gonna win, but we've pretty much eradicated almost the whole lion species through hunting and deforestation and etc., etc. So, we're responsible for all of that. Lastly, you can do this with many animals, building up a whole protege of beasties and familiar. But again, you should not take them by force. It should be through trust and cooperation. Now, to close, I just want to share a side story to help elucidate what these powers of the Warg are that are being talked about. And this happened once to me by accident. So, this is back in early 2013, or it may have been fall 2012. It was around that time. So I had just gotten out of the rave scene, and I had done a lot of experimental LSD and 25I, 2C chemical drugs, but more than any of that, there was Molly, but there was a lot of ketamine. And ketamine is a dissociative drug that a lot of people, their first time having an out-of-body experience, i.e. astral projecting, is because they took a dose of ketamine and it released the association of body and mind, and it allowed their astral body to easily rise up out of their body. And so a lot of people describe suddenly they're looking down from the ceiling and they're floating over their body. Most people, it freaks them out, and then they shoot back down and they reconnect with the body, and that experience is over. But you can get to a point where I was raving one time. I took a dose of ketamine, I sat down and meditated, and I literally walked around the whole entire club. I saw everything that was going on, and then I came back and sat in meditation pose on the astral plane, just in front of my body. And I heard somebody worried because I'm sitting there with my eyes closed at a rave in a corner. Somebody, and they didn't know I was meditating, so they thought, oh my God, is this person hurt or in trouble? And I made sure, looking with my astral eyes, I could feel my physical eyes closed in my body, so I'm looking through my astral eyes. I paid attention to who and what was exactly in front of me. There was about 10 people scattered at every angle. I paid attention to whose arm was in what position, what kind of bracelets they were wearing, what color was their clothes, who they were, things like that, so that when I re-entered my body, so I could tell them, hey, no, I'm meditating, I'm okay. I was able to prove that, no, I was seeing with my astral body. Mind you, this was pre-occultism and Delimus. I didn't have all the terminology. I just knew that I was having an out-of-body experience. And I was able to see things on the physical plane with some type of spirit that had left my body, my spiritual body. And so then I went back into meditation. I did that about 2 or 3 more times. And I got interrupted a couple more times by other people who didn't know that I was just sitting there meditating. They were worried maybe this person had an OD or they're sick or something's wrong. And each time I made sure to pay attention to what I was about to see when I re-entered my body and opened my eyes. And lo and behold, all three or four times that happened, exactly what I saw in the astral plane was exactly what I then saw when I did open my physical eyes. So that was pretty cool. But regarding the powers of the Warg, what I wanted to talk about, so I had given up all drugs and I was completely stone cold sober for quite a few months at that point. But I was still seeking spirituality, and I had not yet found occultism and Thelema. But I was searching. I was asking questions. I was meditating daily, and I was just being open to the process that I was in at that time. And I would do like a 4 mile walk to and from a specific meeting that I was going to every day, back to my house in Bed-Stuy. And along my usual routine route, about 10 to 15 feet in front of me was a pigeon, and it was very weird. So I locked eyes with the pigeon, and then everything sort of looked like it was a little bit digital. Things were kind of a little digitized, almost as if the universe was very static and like almost like when a TV has a little bit of static, but not so much that it becomes blurry, but you could tell like, oh, this is like a digital image on a screen, but it was in 3 dimension because it was the universe. So everything sort of looked like that. Almost a tiny bit pixelated, but that doesn't really describe it. The best I could say is 3 dimensional digital. Almost like the best rendering that's better than anything we've ever rendered on a computer before, but still somehow electronic and digital. So I saw things like that, and then suddenly just how you look out of your eyes and you see your arms and legs, but you don't see your face. You just see whatever's directly in front of you. Like right now, I'm sitting on a chair. My knees are at 90-degree angles. My hands are on my knees now. I have a table in front of me. There's a computer stand on my left. Um, I could see in a periphery. My vision left my body, and it was just what I was able to see. It was like my eyes left my body and my brain was still seeing with my eyes. And suddenly that it turned around 180 degrees and went down towards the ground, and suddenly I was 15 feet away from my body looking up at my body. And then suddenly I felt a reaction that was like, to put that feeling into words, it felt like, hey, what are you doing? You're not supposed to be here. What is happening? This is my body. It felt like that. It wasn't in words, it wasn't in English, but that was the reaction. And then suddenly, my vision came back 180 degrees and came back a few miles per hour, 2 or 3 miles per hour, and came back into my own head. And I was then seeing with my physical eyes again. And I saw the pigeon take flight from where my vision had just been. So I stopped, dumbfounded, completely confused, like, what the hell just happened? And so I really thought about it. I'm like, oh my God. So I had an out of body experience as I was meditating and walking a long distance and having some type of spiritual experience because I was meditating so frequently. And for me, walking could be very meditative and trance inducing. So I got into some type of state of trance and I was able to accidentally astral project by my eyes connecting with the bird's eye. And my visuals went from my own optic nerves, left my body through some type of astral body, and went into the pigeon. And because I had not pushed the pigeon out completely, it was still there. It was able to freak out, which startled me, and it was easily able to push me out of its body by like instinct, you know? It was like a natural reaction to be like, hey, you're not supposed to be here, get out. And it kind of shoved me out, and the only place that my visions could go was back into my body. Almost like it was retracted on like a fishing line coming back to the pole when you reel it in. Um, Hopefully that describes to the best of my ability and you could understand exactly what my experience looked and felt like. Um, so now, years later, I've studied many different types of spirituality and traditions, identify as a Thelemite, but I do a lot of different things. Um, the idea of a warg, or skin changer, or what's being described in this chapter, quote, of the transformations, concerning transformations, end quote, um, is basically the ability to astral project and enter the body of another living being. So in that case, that was the only time that anything like that had ever happened to me, where I entered another living being's body. And like I said, that had happened by accident. I never tried to do it again. But it was a very unique experience, and I do, based on that experience, firmly believe that if you practice astral projection to the point that you could do it on will, like, it's as easy as anything else you do in your mundane life, as easy as walking down the street or riding a bicycle or washing your hands or whatever. When you could astral project that strongly, I do believe that you can get to the point where you practice working with an animal and you can enter its body. So I've had that experience by accident. I've never trained in it specifically, but through my own experience, I do know that it is possible. You just have to put the work in. So, if that appeals to you, that was a little short story to end this talk. So, love is the law, love and will. I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace.